Allegations of sex and violence seem to have teamed up with sports. Do we hold athletes to a higher standard, or have these alleged behaviors become an acceptable part of athletic culture? Joining us now for a deeper look at the risky behaviors of athletes are Dr. Dagmar, a sex therapist and author of How to Stay in Love to the Same Person for the Rest of Your Life and Still Love It, and sports psychologist Dr. Richard Lesberg. We welcome you both to the show. So, Dr. Lesberg, let's start with you. I think that ever since I read the story about the high school football players who had basically sodomized the younger boys at this camp, it has just chilled. I can't even think about it. It stays with me. Is this an isolated incident, or is something, this crude, this sexual, basically some people would say this sick, really widespread now in high school sports?
Oh, I don't think it's necessarily germane to just high school sports. I think it's germane to the entire society. I think it's being framed around sports. When you look at it in the wider frame of things, it was an aggressive act towards others and pathological at best. So it's criminal, pathological, aggressive act of behavior. Just the fact that it happened in a football camp or it happened in a high school football team doesn't necessarily mean that it's germane just to sports.
Dr. O'Connor, it seems to me, I'm a mother of daughters. I don't have sons. I have a grandson now. But I think that there's a difference in the way that society views boys versus girls. Boys will be boys. They're going to be naughty. They're going to be tough. They may be violent. Stand up for your own rights. Is that part of the problem? Is there a systemic, embedded potential for violence that our society gives to boys that they don't give to girls?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, boys rough and tumble. And in my practice, I see couples all the time where he's complaining, I can't be spontaneous with her. And she's not used to rough and tumble. So she gets frightened when he becomes too aggressive. And then both of them have to understand that they grew up differently. Explaining men to women and women to men is what I have to do all the time.
Oh, I think that that's a good point. I think that not only are men socialized differently, but the biological chemistry of men's brains and women's brains and the hormonal kind of things go way far back, and the new research shows that men are much more aggressive. Men's brains are not completely wired, and the executive functions don't come in until they're close to 25 years of age. So the aggression that is built into a male, both societally and of course genetically, goes without saying.
And then you add sports to this, where grown men usually have to pull back when you get in your 20s. These men become boys forever, and they live in their activity, and then they become extremely powerful, and that's attractive to women. They're no different than politicians. Isn't this the stories we get about the politicians as well as the sports?
That's an interesting comparison. Dr. Lesberg, you actually work with athletes in high school, as I understand. What is it? Does it start there? Does the problem start there? Is there something about the culture in high schools that makes young men violent?
Well, I think when you take a look at all young men in high school behave, there's a certain immaturity. When you look at the developmental phase of high school and where kids are at that age, or developmental ages, boys in general are very physical with each other. There's a lot of patting on the back, there's a lot of pushing, there's a lot of shoving, compared to women or the girls who are a lot more sophisticated and ahead. That's why a lot of times the girls tend to take men who are older to bridge that gap between the abilities, between the social skills of each one. But all you have to do is just look in the cafeteria at any given time, and there's a lot of physicality that goes in women and boys.
I want to remind our viewers, please feel free to call, get in on the discussion, ask a question, a comment. Maybe something has happened in your town or city in regards to this kind of thing. Maybe you have kids, maybe you have a comment on sports athletes. But I want to get back to this high school incident, because it's one thing for boys to be rough and tumble. It's one thing for them even to beat up on each other. But I'm telling you, I think it must be very chilling to parents to see that sodomy by high school boys. What's happening when high school boys sodomize each other? I want to ask it again. Is it much more common? Has this been around, and I didn't know about it?
Oh, I think it's been around an extremely long time. I think a lot of times it's been
boarding schools.
Yes, it's been covered up
in history.
Absolutely. If you look at hazing, hazing is really pervasive throughout a society. Or let's say coming into a new club, a new college sorority.
But to that degree of cruelty, to that degree of degradation.
No, that's a straight criminal act. That was a straight out criminal act. straighten out. That's a pathological criminal act that we had there. It just happened to happen in the context of that football piece. So do kids commit crimes? Absolutely. Without a doubt. It goes without saying. It's not because the football didn't bring on the crime. It was endemic to the individual to start. So if we look at the sport and work that way, rather than looking at the individual.
But you would think that sports is an outlet for some of this behavior, right? I mean, and instead what we get is we get a Kobe Bryant, you hear other examples all the time. What is it about sports that gets us into these kinds of situations?
Well, I don't think it's the sport per se. It goes back to Kobe Bryant, the individual. We have no idea about Kobe Bryant's sexual, intimacy with his wife. I haven't spoken to Kobe lately, nor have I spoken to his wife. But on the other hand, when you take a look at Kobe Bryant's history, he was a very sheltered child and a very sheltered individual. And given all of that, he had to know, by the way, just to make one point, he had to know in the end what was going to happen to him had he done this, one way or another, if it did or did not happen. So it makes you begin to think what was going on with inside Kobe, given the consequences that were going to come up.
But let me add to this, that when I grew up, it was a signal if you went to a man's room. It meant that you were willing to have sex. Mm-hmm. Now this has all changed, and the women have changed it, but I'm not so sure that the men have changed, that the signal to them is that she's free to go for. And I think it's a communication problem. I mean, what was she doing there in the first place?
Right.
And even though we're not in this trying to say, who is at fault or who isn't, I think that this point is very important because the signals that are being given on both sides, they have changed. How has society played into that? I mean, I brought up this whole thing about how boys are raised in art. There's a boy code, for example.
Right.
There's also a girl code, but I think the boy code may be one that is more systemic and maybe more difficult to break, and it leads them to these points. I mean, they're being made pop stars. They have young women who are throwing themselves at them. How does a person add youth to that? How do they sort?
Absolutely. Very difficult. Extremely difficult. But if you look at it in terms of, let's say, the Kobe Bryant case, if you look at it 2 or 3 points just quickly. Number one, Kobe didn't go to college, so you have to wonder what kind of social skills he might have missed by missing that experience. He was very sheltered, like I said. Number two, when he got into the NBA, you have to wonder about what it means to be a man in a society. Frequently, men would equate sex with intimacy. So we don't know, again, Kobe as a sexual human being. So to him, having a number of women, we don't know whether he's insecure about his sexuality or having a number of women would make him feel better about himself as a man. Just because he shoots a basketball doesn't necessarily mean he feels good about himself as an academician or that he may be a Rhodes Scholar. I'm not commenting on how bright or not bright he is, or that he may have social skills that equal his basketball playing abilities.
There's also an aspect that men like to go from A to Z when it comes to sexuality. And when a woman says no in the middle, he gets very humiliated. It's like he's failed as a man. He hasn't done what he's supposed to do.
That's a good point. Women frequently complain about the fact that men are not intimate in a verbal way or have foreplay or begin to be romantic. They just want to get into bed with you, have relations, and leave. And that's a frequent complaint that I get from women and men in my practice and with kids as well as general. And it's just, he just wants to have sex with me and he doesn't want to take me for a dinner. And it's with married couples and people who are dating as well.
So basically, it seems you two are both saying the same thing, that what we have are, sexual tensions and dynamics and this miscommunication sometimes, men versus women. Times have changed. The rules aren't so clear-cut. It creates these confusions. So let's go from there, and let's, again, get back in the world of sports. And you said, with boys, it's a combustible mixture, right? They've got the energy. Now, even on a high school campus, they've got some star power. You multiply that. Is there again, though, I think what I'm trying to figure out, is this gotten worse? Are we having a worse problem with athletes and sex in our society?
Or are we just hearing more about it?
I think we're hearing more about it. Because when I take histories, the experience of the school background and the horrors in the schools, they were in men's backgrounds. But we are much more focused in our society on who is being victimized. And, of course, sports. The famous sports people you hear about because the media covers them.
Sports
it happens on Wall Street all the time.
Absolutely. That's a great point. An absolutely great point. The line between